Good evening. We are back to the study of the Spirit's book. We are on book 2, chapter 6, is the spirit life. And this item, which is the theoretical essay of spirit sensation, is written by Kardec. He's the one that wrote. It's not a question and answer to the spirits. It's Kardec explaining to us according to the knowledge of that he had at the time, and understanding of the sensation in the spirit, not in the physical body. This is a theoretical essay that was published in the 3rd edition of the Spirit's book, and it can be found also in the Spiritist Review of 1858. I don't know exactly what month. I forgot what month. So it's a long text. We're going to break it in 3 parts. So I'm going to ask Philip to start reading for us, and then we stop a little bit, and then we comment, okay?
I have a request.
Yes.
I have on my screen a bar that has a gray background with mute, stop video, participants, chat, reaction, share, and so forth on. And the last item is leave. And I don't seem to have the ability to move it off the screen. So it obscures probably the last 2 or 3 lines.
Okay, I'll raise the pages as you get to the bottom.
Okay, great. Theoretical essay of spirit sensation. Question 257. The body is the instrument of pain. And if it is not the first cause, it is at least the immediate cause. The soul perceives pain. It is an effect of the pain from the body. The memory the spirit preserves may be very painful, but it does not have any physical outcome. In effect, the soul cannot be affected by cold or heat and can neither freeze nor burn. Do we not often see that the memory or worry about physical pain can produce the effect of pain in reality, and it may even result in death? For example, recently amputated patients often complain of feeling pain in the missing limb, yet it is obvious that the amputated limb cannot really be the source or starting point of the pain. The brain has retained the impression of the pain experienced previously. One can therefore conclude that the suffering felt by spirits after death is of a similar nature. A careful study of the perispirit, which plays an important role in spiritual phenomena, provides valuable insights into the nature and origin of vaporous or tangible apparitions, as well as the state of the spirit at time of death. Inclusive of striking accounts presented by the victims of suicide and capital punishment, the sentiments communicated by the spirits of those who have been absorbed in material pleasures, as well as many other sources of information, have shed new light on this question, as is summarized below. The perispirit is the link between the spirit and the material body. It is drawn from the atmosphere, from the universal fluid. It holds both electricity and magnetic fluid, and to an extent, inert matter. One can say that it is the essence of matter. It is the principle of organic life, but not of intellectual life. Since the spirit is the source of intellectual life, it is also the agent of all the sensations of the external life. Those sensations are located in the organs of the physical body, which serve as their channels. When the body is destroyed, those sensations become generalized. This explains why a spirit never says that it suffers more in its head than in its feet. We must be careful not to confuse the sensations of the perispirit, which has become independent, with the sensations experienced by the body. The latter can only be understood as a means of comparison with the former and not as an equivalent. The spirit may suffer when freed from the body, but its suffering is not physical. Yet it is not purely moral suffering either, such as remorse, because the spirit complains of feeling cold or hot despite suffering no more in the summer than in the winter. We have even seen spirits go through flames without feeling pain, as temperature has no impression on them. The pain that a spirit feels is not physical in the proper sense of the term, but as rather a vague feeling perceived by the spirit, and for which it is not always able to account, because it is not localized and not produced by any external agent. It is a memory rather than a reality, albeit a memory that is as painful as though it were a reality. Nevertheless, spirit must raise.
Last line.
Suffering is sometimes more than a memory, as we shall see.
Thank you. Okay. So talking about sensations, spirit sensation, right? First, we have to understand that we have a physical body, a spiritual body, and we are the spirit. The pain in the physical body is different from the pain in the spiritual body. The pain in the spiritual body is more a reflection of our minds than the reality of the pain here in the physical body. As Kardec explains, here is the memory the spirit preserves from the physical body, because a spirit, the perispirit, cannot be affected by cold or heat or cannot burn. The perispirit is not affected by material things, physical things of the physical world. But our mind plays a fundamental role in the sensations of the spirit. And again, we spend 50, 60, 80, 90 years living in the physical body. So our sensations become part of who we are. So we have a headache, it's in our head. We go back to the spiritual world, we have a headache. We feel in our head, despite not being exactly in our head. And again, Kardec explains here that the suffering felt by the spirits is of a similar nature, but it cannot be compared to the physical body, because it's of a different nature that the spirits are not able to explain for lack of us having a language. Now, it's interesting when Kardec makes a comparison, someone that has an amputated limb that continues feeling the missing limb, right? Which is, they call the phantom pain, right? The pain where the limb was and is no longer there. It is both in the mind of the spirit and reflected on the perispirit, because you amputated that limb because of a reason, right? Because he was injured, because he had some disease. So whatever you were feeling in the limb was transferred to the perispirit, as a sensation. And when you remove, let's say, an arm, the perispirit continues to have everything. You don't remove the arm from the perispirit if the spirit understands the concept, right? The spirit may see itself in the spiritual world without an arm by being used or accustomed not to see itself without the limb. So in the end, the mind plays a very powerful role in all the sensations. And we spoke about it last week, right? We see, we hear, we feel with the whole perispirit. It's not localized. But at our level of evolution, we are going to feel in the spiritual world, in our perispirit, the sensations exactly as we felt here. You are not going to change after, I don't know, let's say 70 years here, having all the sensations localized in the physical body. You're not going to go back to the spiritual world at our level of evolution and understand that the sensations are everywhere and it's not localizing. Even more, it wouldn't make sense to us, right? So you are used to see with your eyes. You go back to the spiritual world and someone's tell you, you know, you don't need your eyes to see. We've been used to see with our eyes for a very long time. So if we close our eyes in the spiritual world, very likely we won't be able to see what's in front of us. Does it mean that we see with our spiritual eyes? No, it means that our brain is conditioned to understand that we can only see with our eyes open for such a long time. Now, as we evolve more, and of course our perispirit becomes less and less material in terms of physical, the less and less we are going to have these physical attributes reflecting the perispirit. But again, it will be something natural that we're not going to think about it. It will just happen, right? Like when we talk about volitation, that André Luiz started volitating, right? The first time he volitated, of course, he doesn't describe, but he had to think about it, right? And he had to be guided. And later, it's just a natural thing. And we talk about, last week we discussed thought, right? A spirit where the thought, the speed of thought, meaning a spirit, more evolved spirit, thinks, and it's there where the thought is. But a spirit more or less advanced doesn't have the ability to do that, right? So other concepts that Kardec brings here is in cases of suicide, capital punishment, that the spirits continue to feel everything that they caused to their physical body. And they have difficulty to get rid of those sensations in case of suicide because of the mistake they made. In case of those that do not understand the concept of the spiritual life, by the inability to understand what's happening to them. For those that have ever seen a mediumship meeting, we have spirits that come to our meetings and complain of pain, of suffering, of hot, of cold. And when we study this, we conclude, why are they they're having those feelings? They shouldn't. Well, again, it's in the mind. If they think that they are still connected to the physical body and connected to the physical world, they're going to have the sensations that they are used to in the physical world. Yeah, I think that's it on this. Kardec talks in the end, it's a memory rather than a reality, but the memory can even be more painful than the reality, right? Sometimes when we think about ourselves, right? If we want to imagine how the spirit, we in the spiritual world feel these sensations that are related to the physical world, when we see, sometimes we see a video, or even we witness someone going through something very harmful, you know, an injury, an accident. Some people cannot look, and some people that can look, they feel, right, as if they were with themselves, right? So this is not exactly, but it is more or less what we carry back to the spiritual world. The sensations that we feel here, which are even more relevant because we are not seeing someone else going through it. We went through it. So it's much easier to understand how we carry them back to the spiritual world. Now, this is all temporary, right? If we understand the process, if we continue living the spiritual world, continue evolving the spiritual world, it becomes natural to us, like it becomes natural to us when we incarnate. Those sensations, as we grow from child to adolescence, we become aware of the sensations, the ability to talk, the ability to hear, the ability to think. We develop in the physical world. As we go back to the spiritual world and we spend time there, learning and using our time in a positive way, because those that are immersed in guilty or in persecutions, then they cannot deal with that. But those that are using their time in the spiritual world in a positive way, this will become second nature to them, right? So eventually you start seeing without really using your eyes. You start feeling, you know, without having the physical relation to what you have in the physical world. You start feeding yourself with air, no longer with the food, because there is food in the spiritual world. We still need water, all these things, the equivalent of, right? But as we become more and more used to the spiritual world in terms of positive evolution, we are going to use less and less of all of this. Okay?
Is it kind of a matter of readaptation to spiritual world?
Combined with the progress.
Yeah, okay.
Because for you to readapt to the spiritual world, you need to be focused on readapting. If you are focused on something else, on obsessing someone, you're not readaptating. You're just, your mind is only focused on one thing. So, you know, you will continue to have the same feelings that you had here, cold, hot, hunger, all these sensations will continue to be part of you as a spirit in spiritual world, because you are not making no effort, you know, conscious or unconscious, to get rid of those things. Okay? Questions? Okay, let's go. Danny, you have a question? Okay.
So the food in the spiritual world feeds the perispirit?
Yes.
Or the mind?
Feeds both, right? The spirit doesn't need food. What needs food is the mind of the spirit, and it uses the perispirit to feed itself, right? So it's, you know, for you to imagine you are back in the spiritual world, but you are still very much with all feelings and sensations of the physical world, right? So you get hungry, right? Someone gives you a soup there, right? It's in the mind, in your mind. You are drinking that soup there, and in your mind, you are feeling satisfied, different from here. that the food will go into your stomach and produces all the effects that food causes on the physical world there. No, it's all a psychological effect that the food is bringing to you. Okay, and again, the spirits tells us to be very careful. We don't have words to exactly describe how it works, but if you think of it, the perispirit doesn't need food to survive. You know, the physical body needs food, otherwise we die. The perispirit doesn't die and doesn't need food. But if the spirit thinks it needs food, then the food will psychologically satisfy the spirit, okay? Without any material effect on the perispirit. It's just a mental effect.
But the food is real, is matter. It's
Yes, it's spiritual matter, yes.
spiritual matter, okay.
Yes, but it doesn't have the same effect that it has here, right? It doesn't feed the body and produces what the body produces here in the physical world. It just, for lack of better words, feed the mind. It's not exactly that, but that's what we should make the analogy, right? Of the spirit. Feeds the mind of the spirit. The necessity of the spirit. You know, the spirits that, for instance, spirits that are alcoholics, right? Here, go back to the spiritual world and need to attach themselves to those that drink. Are they drinking? No. So why do they need to attach themselves to because the smell of the alcohol, the spirits in the sense of alcohol, right? It's what feeds their mind. They feel the need to have those sensations. Vital fluid, they chase vital fluid. What is vital fluid? It's what is used to animate the physical body. The less evolved spirits, with absorbing the vital fluid of the incarnates that are discarnating, they feel the sensation that they are alive again in the physical world. That is, it's a sort of an addiction to the physical body, right? That they left behind and cannot get rid of the necessity of the needs of the physical body.
But in the case of the alcohol, is not spiritual matter,
Well,
right? Is our physical matter.
No, but what do they absorb from the one who is drinking? They don't drink. The person that drinks, you get to someone that is close to someone that is very drunk, you smell the drunkenness, right? You smell the alcohol, right? That's what the spirits feed on. The what's it called? It's not the
like the sweat then, because you smell not only the alcohol, you smell the sweat, the body odor.
Yes,
the whole thing.
Yes.
The energy. So it's basically the person's energy as well, right?
Yes, exactly. That's what the spirits absorb. And again, they have, for someone that you hear people say, oh, I can drink a bottle of whiskey and I don't get drunk. Well, they're drinking a quarter of the bottle and the 3/4 is drank by the spirits in a way, right? Because the spirits take everything, how do you call the thing that comes from the alcohol? I don't know. The vapor, thank you, vapor, exactly. They smell the vapor, right? It feeds their minds. Again, it's their minds, the sensation, right? They don't get drunk, right? Spirits don't get drunk. But the vapor makes them feel like they are back in the physical world, and allow them to feel the same sensations that they had in the physical world. Same thing with cigarettes. Those that used to smoke heavily, they need to feel the smoke of the cigarette to feed their brains, right? So the sensations, it's a very good example of how the sensations are in the mind of the spirit, right? Okay, let's continue.
Observation has shown us that the perispirit is released gradually from the body at the time of death. In the first few moments following death, a spirit does not clearly understand the situation. It feels alive and therefore does not realize that it died. It sees its body, know it for its own, and does not understand why it is separated from it. This confusion continues as long as there is any connection at all between the body and the perispirit, no matter how slight. For example, a person who has recently committed suicide said to us, "No, I am not dead," and added, "Yet I can feel the worms that are devouring my body." The worms obviously were not devouring the perispirit, much less the spirit itself, but only the body. Since a moral repercussion transmitted the sensation of what was taking place in the body because the separation between the body and the perispirit was not complete. Repercussion is perhaps not the right word to use in this case, as it may seem to imply an effect too closely linked to the material world. The sight of what was happening to the decaying body, still attached to the perispirit, produced an illusion that it mistook for reality. In this case, it was not a memory because worms had never devoured it during its lifetime. It was the perception of something that was actually taking place. When we analyze the aforementioned case, we can draw conclusions based on the attentive observation of facts. During life, the body receives external impressions and transmits them to the spirit through the perispirit, which is probably what is called the neural fluid. The body, when dead, no longer feels anything because it no longer has a spirit or perispirit. The perispirit, when detached from the body, still experiences sensation, but it no longer reaches it through a specific channel. Consequently, it is generalized rather than localized. Since the perispirit is only an agent of transmission, because only the spirit possesses consciousness, it may be deduced that if the perispirit could exist without the spirit, the perispirit would feel no more than a dead body. Likewise, if the spirit does not have a perispirit, it feels no pain, as in the case with completely purified spirits. As the spirit progresses, the essence of its perispirit becomes more and more ethereal, demonstrating that the influence of matter diminishes in proportion to the advancement of the spirit. That is to say, as its perispirit becomes less and less coarse. One may contend, however, that if it is through the perispirit that both good and bad sensations are transmitted to the spirit, then the assertion that an unpleasant sensation is inaccessible to a purified spirit must also imply that pleasant sensations are equally inaccessible. This is true with regard to the sensations that proceed solely from the influence of matter that we know and recognize. The sound of our instruments and perfume of flowers make no impression on higher spirits, yet these same spirits experience vivid sensations of the indescribable charm. It is impossible for us to begin to fathom these sensations because when it comes to spirit sensations, we are like people blind from birth trying to understand the concept of light. We know that spirit sensations exist, but our knowledge is inadequate to explain their nature or how they are produced. What we do know is that spirits possess perception, sensation, hearing, and sight, and that these faculties are attributes of their whole being and are not limited to the five senses through which human beings experience them. But once again, in what way? However, in terms of trying to understand how these faculties act, we know nothing. The spirits themselves cannot explain it to us because our language cannot express ideas that transcend our comprehension. Just as a savage is unable to express our arts, sciences, or philosophical theories.
Thank you. Yeah, I think by the end here, Kardec is talking how we don't have words to explain or to understand the sensation in perfect spirits or more evolved spirits. And the example he gives here is a very good, right? I was watching a lecture this week that the person giving the lecture was using the exact same example, but instead of the concept of light, he was talking about the concept of colors. How can we explain color to someone that is blind from birth, right? What's the concept? You're going to explain through energy. You know, the different energies produce different colors. It's very, very difficult to explain. So what Kardec is telling us here is that we don't really have a way to understand how perfect spirits experiment these sensations that we don't have words to describe. But going back to the beginning here, Kardec first talks about the discarnation process, right? When the perispirit separates itself from the physical body. For those that are very attached to the physical body, do not believe in the survival of the soul, or that commit suicide, they tend to continue attached mentally to the physical body. We know that the connections between the perispirit and the physical body are severed after up to 72 hours. So after the 72 hours at max, there is no links between the physical body and the spiritual body. But the spirit can still be connected mentally to the physical body. That's why you find many spirits in the cemeteries, for the mediums that can see them. The example Kardec gives here of the spirit that committed suicide, saying, I'm not dead, but I can feel the worms that are devouring my body, which gives another very interesting concept here, right? Because Kardec explains this spirit, the worms are never devouring its body when they were alive. So you cannot say that it's a memory that the spirit had. The spirit is experiencing something as it's happening in the physical body. But it's that thing that I mentioned, right? You seeing something and feeling something happen to someone else, and you feel the pain, or you feel the affliction, or you know, some if you see someone being hit on our more fragile parts, right? We can feel the sensation, right? So someone in the spiritual world, in a profound state of confusion, which is the state of a suicide, looking at their physical body, thinking that they try to kill themselves, they're not dead. So they fail to kill themselves. So they cannot imagine that they are not connected to the physical body. Still, worms are devouring the physical body. So can you imagine the desperation of the spirit, right? Because they cannot understand, explain, but they can feel. And again, when you are feeling something that you can find no explanation, is a very afflicting pain, right? Because when we have pain in our physical body, any pain, and we don't know the explanation, we go we know some people that have some different types of diseases and go to doctors and cannot find a cure, cannot find the reason what's behind the pain, right? And it becomes something very difficult to deal with. Now you imagine going to the spiritual world and being attached to a physical body that is decaying, and you don't know how to separate. Your mind is still connected to it. It's very hard. It's a challenge, and that's what, Kardec, again, talking about the sensations of the spirit. Remember, we're discussing the sensations of the spirit. The sensations of the spirit, we see clearly here how they are in the mind, right? Because the perispirit is not connected to the physical body. The worms are eating a physical body that no longer should have any effect on the spirit. But the mind of the spirit feels everything because it's connected mentally to the physical body, not not physically, right? I think that, and then that it's more of the same, right? Kardec's talking about the perispirit, that experience sensations, generalized sensations. And it's interesting that he talks about the perispirit. If the perispirit could exist without the spirit, which it doesn't, right? We have to remember that the perispirit belongs to the planet, to the matter associated to the planet where we are. So when we change planets, we change perispirits. We leave the matter that forms the perispirit behind. So if, as the spirit evolves and the perispirit becomes less and less dense, the matter is changing, but it's not disconnecting from the spirit. It's just changing the matter. It's not being lost anywhere, right? But Kardec gives the example. If the perispirit could exist without the spirit, the perispirit will feel no more than a dead body, because perispirit is matter, comes from the universal cosmic fluid, and it's matter, like the physical body, like everything else that it is not the spirit or God. And the spirit progresses, it becomes more and more ethereal, and the influence of matter diminishes. And then he goes on to discuss the perfect spirits that can no longer feel good or bad in theory, because the unpleasant sensations are unavailable to purified spirits, so pleasant sensations would also be unavailable. But again, it's all in the mind. So we can only deduce, imagine that a perfect spirit or a more purified spirit carries the positive sensations, the pleasant sensations that he had throughout his or her evolution, and can have those feelings, right? Without us being able to explain exactly how it happens, or the way it happens, right? Our knowledge is inadequate to explain their nature or how they are produced. Okay? Okay, questions here? Danny?
So, in the case of the worms, the spirits feeling the worms eating the body, is that because the spirit thought, the person thought that it was dying, so it was finishing its life, but the life continued?
Yeah.
Or
it's a feeling in a complete state of confusion, Danny, because when you commit suicide, you think that everything is going to end. So when you see, and again, we can rationalize this, but a person that it's not in a state, in a condition to rationalize it. But us rationalizing is someone tries to kill it oneself, fails because we cannot die. Now, if this person thinks that it failed, then they think that they still have a physical body, right? Because I try to, they think they only have the physical body, nothing else. I killed my physical body, but I didn't die, so I failed. My physical body is still alive. It's in the state of confusion, right? They are feeling the worms devouring its body, but they cannot understand or even rationalize the concept of what's happening. They just have the feelings without being able to explain and without understanding what's going on. It's a complete state of confusion.
But for example, in Brazil, they bury the dead people, right? When people die, it could be 4 hours later.
Yes.
They are already burying the person. So that's pretty quick.
Yeah. But
If we have 72 hours.
But
So
the
that kind of sensations could happen to someone that did not commit suicide, but is not aware that the life continues as well, because it's so soon that.
Well, it can happen to very materialistic people that do not believe in life after death, right? That this state of confusion, they can feel what's happening to the physical body. Is less likely than with a suicide. And again, we have cremation. So so they are going to experience the body being burned. How can they not understand that the physical body is dead if it's going to a furnace to be burned, right? But the confusion is so big that they cannot make sense of things. You know, they see their physical body being burned or being buried, and really they cannot understand what's happening. The confusion is too big for them to make sense of what's happening. So something is happening, they don't understand why, how, and but they are having the feelings without being able to explain what's going on, and without being able to rationalize, because they are, you know, it's a very disturbed state of mind of someone that died and does not accept that death, that life continues.
But in this case, you mean they're also feeling, they could feel the sensations in their mind, but also not necessarily.
Not necessarily, yes.
Mhm.
If you have the merit, you're going to be protected. Even if you are materialistic, you don't believe in life after death, but let's say you dedicate your whole life to help others, to be a good person. It doesn't matter if you don't believe, you believe that the death is the end of everything. When you die, you're going to receive the assistance of the spiritual benefactors that are going to protect you from all those feelings. You know, the feelings are for those that either committed suicide or that, you know, do not believe that in life after death, and dedicate their lives to cause harm to others, to be, you know, to commit to evil acts. Those are the ones that are going to be more paying the price of the life they led. Okay. Okay, Philip, let's try to finish this. You are on mute, Philip.
When we say that spirits are immune to any form of impression from physical matter, it must be understood that we are speaking of spirits of a very high order whose etherealized envelope finds no analogy in this world. It is different with spirits whose perispirit is denser, because they perceive our sounds and smells, even though the perception no longer happens through specific sensory organs, as they did during life. We may say that they feel molecular vibrations throughout their entire being, reaching their sensorium commun, although this is in a different manner and can cause a different impression that may change the resulting perception. They hear the sound of our voice, yet they can understand us by thought transmissions without speech. This penetration is easier for them as they are more dematerialized. Sight is independent of our light. The ability to see is an essential attribute of the soul, and there is no darkness for spirits of a high order. It is more penetrating and extensive in those whose purification is more advanced. The soul or spirit possesses the faculty of all perceptions, but the physical organs dull this perception down during corporal life. However, in the spirit world, these perceptions become more and more vivid as the semi-material envelope is purified. This envelope is drawn from the atmosphere surrounding the spirit for the time being and varies according to the nature of the different worlds. When spirits travel from one world to another, they change their envelope the same way we change our clothing when we transition from summer to winter and travel from the North or South Pole to the equator. When they come to visit us, the most elevated spirits assume a terrestrial perispirit. They maintain this perispirit during their stay, and their perceptions are therefore produced in the same way as lower spirits. All spirits, whether of high or low ranking, only hear and feel what they choose to hear and feel. Without processing sensory organs, spirits make their perception active and prevent their action. There is only one thing that they are compelled to hear, and that is the guidance of good spirits. Their sight is always active, and they make themselves invisible to one another, depending on their rank. Spirits of higher rank have the power to hide from those who are below them. However, a low-ranking spirit cannot hide from those who are above it. In the initial moments after death, a spirit's vision is obscure and confused. It becomes clearer as it is free from the body. Not only does it acquire the same clarity it had during life, but also it has now the power of penetrating images that were opaque to it in physical life. As for the extension of a spirit's vision through space into the future and past, that depends entirely on its degree of purity and the subsequent elevation.
Thanks. Okay, thought it was the last part, but it's not. So Kardec says here that as we evolve, right, as our perispirit becomes less and less denser, the more the sensations become part of our entire perispirit and less localized mentally in our perispirit. And the more the perispirit is denser, and we are able to perceive the sounds and smells of the physical world because we are closer to what's happening here on Earth, right? And then he talks about, for instance, the sound of our voice, right? That the spirits can understand through transmission of thought without speech. But when a medium talks about, and Laura is here and she can confirm, when a medium receives a communication from the spirit, it's a thought to thought between the spirit and the medium. The medium doesn't hear words and repeats. It comes to the mind of the medium through the thoughts. Correct, Laura? Or Fabio, that are both mediums that are here? Danny also.
Funny you say that, because actually how it starts is 1, 2 words. You hear 1, 2 words in your thought, not outside of your body, but in your thought. And that's how that begins, because I remember in the beginning I was dismissing those words, and Jasara had said, no, that's it. You take on the 2 words and then it changes. And after you take those 2 words, then it kind of becomes where you let go and it takes over, meaning you're speaking for it. You're allowing it to speak through you, and it's very natural. You know, like you have no idea what it's going to say next, or you know, what's going to come next. But it's very fluid. It's very fluid and easy, and you're kind of sitting next to the conversation. So you know, the spirit is channeling through you, and yourself, your thoughts are kind of a little bit off center and next to the conversation. So you know what's going on as it's going on. You know if you're moving, because sometimes I'll move. All of a sudden my hands will move and do a gesture. You know, you're aware of the bodily pain. But yeah, it comes in as 2 words, 1 to 2 words, and you just kind of go from there. For me, I don't know if Fabio can confirm that.
Yeah, different people have different mediums have different ways of the communication, right? You have the conscious, the semi-conscious, which I believe you are kind of semi-conscious, right? Because you many times you just know what's going on after you speak, right? It's not that you know before speaking, right? Correct?
Yeah, I know what's kind of going on as I speak, but afterwards, I really don't remember a lot of it.
Yeah, so it's the
And sometimes I don't remember any of it.
That's a semi-conscious medium, right? The conscious medium will, before talking, will know what they're talking. Fabio saying that the same. This is similar to him also. I don't know, Danny, with you, more or less the same, right? So again, this is how the communication between the spirits are, more or less, right? Because in the end, a medium and a discarnated spirit are 2 spirits communicating with each other. So between the spiritual world and the physical world, but between communications in the spiritual world, again, the spirits are going to talk if the other spirit can only understand through conversations, but it is really through thought. And as we evolve, this becomes more and more part of our perispirit, right? Then Kardec talks a little bit what we mentioned before. The envelope is drawn from the atmosphere surrounding the spirit in the different planets that they are. They change their envelope the same way we change our clothing. I think that's a very good example how we change the perispirit. And when they are connected, let's say to Earth, they keep their perispirit with Earth material and characteristics. In terms of listening to other spirits, or Kardec says that spirits can hear and feel what they choose to hear and feel, and we discussed this last week, right? The spirits have ability to isolate what they feel, what they see, and how they are seen. Again, more evolved spirits, regarding lower spirits, they can appear or not appear in front of them. The less evolved spirits, before more evolved spirits, they cannot hide themselves. You cannot hide your thoughts, you cannot hide your physical presence from superior spirits that want to see or hear you, okay, access your thoughts. It goes always from higher to lower spirits. The higher can make themselves seen, make themselves heard, and the lower spirits cannot prevent this from happening, okay? And as we evolve, he concludes, then he goes more into the future and the past, that we studied the last couple of weeks ago with Elmo study, right? the ability of the spirit to see the future and see the past, depending on the degree of purity and elevation of the spirit. Okay, questions here? Let me see if we're going to try to finish this. Yeah, we're going to finish this because it's a little more of the same, so we don't start in the middle next week. Philip, please. You're mute again.
Some say that this theory is anything but encouraging. We had thought that once freed from our rudimentary body envelope, the instrument for all our pain and suffering, we would no longer suffer. Now you tell us that we continue to suffer in the other life, but the fact that it can be in a different way does not make it any less painful. We may still have to suffer greatly and for a long period of time, but there is also the possibility that we will no longer suffer, even from the very moment when our physical life ends. The pain that we endure in our present life is sometimes independent of our actions, but it is often the consequence of our own volition. If we trace the root of our suffering, we see that in most cases it is due to causes that we could have avoided. How many problems and illnesses can a person trace back to overindulgence, ambition, and the impulses of numerous passions? If a person could live a completely sober life without ever overindulging and remaining simple and modest in tastes and desires, such an individual would escape a large majority of the pain and suffering of human life. The same theory applies to the spirit life, in which suffering is always the consequence of how a spirit lived on earth. While it no longer suffers from gout or arthritis in the spirit life, its wrongdoing causes him or her to experience other woes that are no less painful. This pain is the result of the bonds that exist between a spirit and matter. The freer it is from the influence of matter, or the more dematerialized it is, the less pain it feels. Therefore, we are each responsible for freeing ourselves from the influence of matter by our actions in this present life. Human beings have free will, which gives them the power to choose to do something or not. We must conquer our animal passions by freeing themselves of hatred, envy, jealousy, pride, and by breaking the shackles of selfishness and purifying their souls by fostering honorable thoughts and ideas. They must do good and only attribute to physical things the importance that they deserve. Thereby, even in its corporal envelope, it will have purified itself by detaching from matter, and when it leaves the body behind, it will not suffer any longer from its influence. For these individuals, the memory of the physical anguish suffered in the life they have just left is not painful and does not produce unpleasant reactions because they only affected their bodies and left no trace on their souls. They are happy to be free, and the tranquility of a clear conscience exempts them from moral suffering. We have spoken with thousands of spirits who once belonged to every class of society and studied them at every period in their spirit life, starting from the moment when they left their bodies. We have followed them step by step in life beyond the grave to learn about the changes that took place in their ideas and sensations. In this respect, the most ordinary individuals were not the ones who furnished us with the least precious elements of study. This evaluation has invariably shown us that spirit suffering is the direct result of their own misconduct, and that their new existence is a source of overwhelming happiness for those who have followed the right road. Those who suffer do so as a result of their own choices and have only themselves to blame for their suffering in both this world and the next.
Thanks, Philip. So here is basically Kardec giving us the recipe to not experience all this pain and suffering that we discussed when we go back to the spiritual world. So leading a life, a positive life in terms of being of assistance to others, not attached to material things any more than necessary. Again, each one of us, we have the needs of our material needs in the physical world. You know, we have our jobs, we have our homes, our possessions here that are important for us to be able to live a peaceful life and be able to theoretically be able to focus on being of assistance to others. So for each person, the level of comfort that they need is different than others, right? But the important thing here is for us not to get attached to these material things that when we are going to miss when we are go back to the spiritual world. Again, we travel to a nice place, another country, and when we remember fondly that country, but you know, it's not a remembrance that causes pain. That's how we should remember our physical existence when we go back to the spiritual world. So if we do everything according to what we should do, making an effort to become better individuals, again, we're not here trying to be perfect because we cannot become perfect in one incarnation. But if we fight our hatred, envy, jealousy, and pride, we fight breaking the shackles of selfishness and purifying our souls, meaning we are evolving, then we go back to the spiritual world and we will avoid all these unpleasant feelings, and we will receive the assistance of the spiritual benefactors in our return to the spiritual world if we are open to receive their help. So this has to, wrapping up, the sensations we have in the perispirit, in the spiritual world, are generalized. We are going to get there eventually as we move forward in the spiritual world. And the painful sensations that we carry from the physical world back to the spiritual world can be avoided if we conduct our lives in a positive way in terms of trying to evolve morally and intellectually. Okay? Any last words, questions? Right, next week we start with choices of trials. Okay, so this Saturday the lecture by the United States Spiritist Federation is going to be by Jussara Korngold, if you remember her, and she's going to talk about the parable of the talents. That's Saturday at 11 a.m. Okay, through the United States Spiritist Federation YouTube page and through the International Spiritist Council webpage and the Facebook of the United States Spiritist Federation. This Sunday, it's the last Sunday of the month, so we are going to have our Q&A session. Please bring your questions so we can have a good discussion, okay? Book club next Wednesday, still discussing chapter 3 of part 2 of the book Paul and Stephen. And also the Spiritist group of Connecticut changed their meetings to Tuesdays at 7 p.m. So now from Thursday at noon, move to Tuesday at 7 p.m. They're still studying the Gospel according to Spiritism and Our Daily Bread. Okay? Carol, can you do our final prayer?
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much, John, for hosting this evening. And thank you, Philip, for reading for us tonight. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we give thanks for the opportunity to be together as brothers and sisters for our studies of the Spirit's book, Book 2, Chapter 6, regarding theoretical essay of spirit sensation, which was written by Allan Kardec. We have a physical body, a spiritual body, and a spirit. Our sensations are part of who we are. The brain retains the impression of pain. As the perispirit becomes more purified, it will be less identified with the physical body and the memory of those sensations. Spirits possess vivid perceptions that transcend our own comprehension. Words cannot express nor can explain this. Elevated spirits assume terrestrial perispirits wherever they travel and whenever they travel to other worlds or other planets. We are each responsible to use our free will for goodness and to lessen the grip of negative influences of the physical world and our attachments to it. We give thanks to the spiritual benefactors and the good spirits for guiding and inspiring us this evening. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us and for our loved ones, our teachers, our directors, our counselors, the mediums, the workers, and all participants. We pray for inner peace and especially now for world peace and for those who are suffering in the physical and spiritual worlds. We pray for our center, SGNY, and all Spiritist centers throughout the world, that they may grow, prosper, expand, and be protected throughout the day and throughout the night. As we close, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to our family, friends, loved ones, and co-workers. May we go forth now as beacons of love, of light, of peace, of service, and of charity, which is love in action. May peace and love prevail. So be it.